Okay.
Oh boy.
All right. So I as I've mentioned to you, I'm working on multiple stories, some in a larger format, some specific to a topic. And I
Mhm.
thought photography is such an interesting topic when it comes to storytelling. And because of your experience, we can delve a little further. And if you never know where the story will take you
Yeah,
personally.
sure.
Okay. So the way I usually start the stories with all of my guests is we first start with your personal story. So you can choose to speak about your professional career in photography. I think you have some very interesting stories
Yeah.
and your teaching experience. And then we'll jump into a few questions that I've prepared
Okay.
for photography as a storytelling language.
Well, photography was an option for me.
It will be
Uh,
just great if you actually look at at me because when people will
yeah.
be watching, they'll be watching you. So
Oh, okay. So photography for me began as an option to communicate. So when I was in high school, I was thinking of writing, but I'm not good as a writer. So I thought, how can I bring stories to life uh, without using words? So I decided to use photography. So I took a course, a degree in photography and film here in Toronto, and and I embarked on on the business of creating imagery. Started in the fashion photography world, did a lot of catalog work, and then from fashion I moved to advertising. Did a lot of advertising work here in Toronto, and then in '91 I decided to move to Europe and continue advertising in Lisbon, Portugal, Madrid, Spain, and Amsterdam, Holland, or Netherlands, I should say. So that was my professional career. Since then, um, I've embarked on a different type of photography. My photography was commercial photography. That meant advertising, and that meant productions, meant clients. At one time, I had 5 people working for me, studio structures, um, a complex system to create imagery. Since semi-retiring from advertising, which has taken its toll, advertising today is not what it was 10 years ago, and it's not what it was 20 years ago. It's a completely different animal. So now I've gone into what I call conceptual photography, which is the destruction of the image to create a background story. So if I take a picture of a tree, I'll destroy that tree to do post-production and bring another story from that tree or from that realistic imagery. So I've gone from the practical objective photography, which involves a lot of technology, to spontaneous iPhone type photography, which is just basically instinct. So I've taken years and years and years of applying, of learning how to see, which is what photography and art in itself is, learning how to see the world around you and uh, transforming those visions into, in this case, a two-dimensional surface, which is what I'm doing now, which is conceptual photography, as opposed to the average image taken as a conventional photograph. So that's basically in a nutshell, a couple of minutes of the career. While I was doing commercial photography, working as a professional, I taught at a photography school, a professional school, for 22 years. This was in Lisbon, Portugal, and I also taught in Madrid, Spain. And I was teaching advertising and visual concepts. So two basic courses. Advertising was with the practical side of the imagery, and conceptual, well, teaching conceptual concepts. Well, that's a conundrum. Teaching concepts of imagery, so creating abstract imagery, getting kids to learn how to see. That's the main ingredient in any art form is you have to learn how to see, you have to learn from the world around you, the environment around you, and other artists that followed. So I did that for 22 years. Very rewarding, probably the most rewarding part of my life as far as a professional is concerned. It was great watching kids develop their sensibilities in aesthetics, learning how to use light, learning how to use shape, learning how to use textures, learning how to use color, applying all these techniques. Uh, so was, I learned more from them than it did for me because a young mind has absorbed so much, and an older mind like mine, you bring a lot of preconceived ideas what things should be, which is one of the reasons I broke out into conceptual photography, is to break away from convention. So that was very rewarding, that part of the teaching. So now at this moment, I'm semi-retired. I jumped into not only conceptual photography, but I jumped into another part of art, which is graphic design. Um, I find that interesting as well. And what I bring to my clients with graphic design is that I bring not only the graphic design knowledge, but the photography knowledge, and I'll marriage the two disciplines, which the client gets sort of a 2-for-1 deal. Get a photographer and a designer all in the same package. Believe it or not, but that a graphic designer, someone who designs on a two-dimensional surface. In my case, I also design packaging, which is a three-dimensional, but we'll stick with two-dimensional surfaces. Learning how to join the image with the graphic design, having those two disciplines facilitates the process very quickly, and it eliminates a lot of guesswork. So that's what I've been doing recently, as far as my professional career goes.
I like what you say about learning how to see. So if we can explore that a little further, because for somebody that may be hearing this and watching us here having this interesting discourse, what does it mean learning how to see? Because most people say, I know how to see, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, most people say that. Most people say I can see. Most people say I can draw. Most people say I can be an artist. What do you mean I'm not creative? I get all these cliches. Um, Learning how to see it all, I first learned and I first came across this way of thinking from a book by John Berger, written in the early 80s, I guess, and it's called Ways of Seeing. So the concept of learning how to see is to um, trying to get this out so it doesn't sound convoluted. Um, when we look at a grain of sand, or oh no, let me go another way with this. Um, when we look at a garden full of colors, flowers, what the average, not the average person, but what we tend to see is a postcard. You look at postcards. Oh, isn't that beautiful? Nice flowers, beautiful flowers, great tree. Oh, look at the lawn; it's nicely greened and manicured. This would look this looks beautiful. That's the first impression. Now, if you sit back and you really look and see what's happening in that garden, you try to get into the elements of feeling the flowers growing, feeling the grass being waved with the wind, hearing the trees snap as the branches move back and forth, um, watching how the light hits it. Why are those colors so vivid? Why, if I come on a different day, the colors don't look the same? Why is the manicured lawns not as rich? Um, so as you're looking at that garden, you look at it not only with your eyes or with your cognitive abilities, but you look at it with your emotions, and that becomes uh, a different way of looking at it. So you're looking beyond what's there. You're looking beyond the obvious. You're looking to it from a romantic point of view, from an intuitive use of color that nature has provided. And as far as a photographer is concerned, or a painter, or I want to say a sculptor, but sculptor is it's a 3D imagery. It's a different philosophy. You try to capture that garden, and to do that, you have to be able to be sensitive to all these other ramifications, which is the color, the texture, the line, uh, uh, the shape, all these elements have to become very obvious. And then from there, you take what you just feel, as opposed to seeing it, you feel it. And that's the way of seeing. And you apply that to, as a photographer, you apply that to the camera. And as a visual artist, a painter, you apply that brush to canvas. Now, that being said, um, what you see is really important. Uh, the camera, in my case, the camera is only a tool to capture what I see. So the picture, the image is already in my head, or is in the painter's head, or is in the artist's head. It's already there. We're just using tools to capture that emotion. And that's the difference between an artist and just someone who records what they see. An artist puts beyond what they see onto a canvas or onto a photographic film, or in this case, digital back.
Do you feel that the advancement of technology, although it's enabling um, a more comprehensive approach to photography and art, it's also desensitizing the seeing because it's so massive, it's so fast, it's so available that it just makes it too accessible.
Yeah, to a certain extent. Like, for example, 100 years ago, we would say, oh, here's a picture of my grandfather, one picture. Now, oh, here's 2,000 pictures of my grandfather. So you're right, it does desensitize, but it doesn't desensitize the artist. The artist will always find something that nobody else sees. And that's what distinguishes someone with soul, or someone with artistic soul, or artistic nuance, or artistic nature, from someone who just captures the postcard.
Mhm.
Like that's why I make the difference between, if you're a landscape photographer, if you see a beautiful scene, you capture that, and that's a postcard picture. Anybody who sees that will capture that. It's the artist, whether they're doing digital work or using a pinhole camera, which dates back to the hundreds of years ago. Um, there's the difference between someone who just captures that because it's pretty. Everybody and anybody with a camera, or if they're painters, would capture that same scene. It's somebody who's an artist, or who can see beyond the obvious, that turns it into a piece of art, or something that's different, that has soul, that has beauty beyond what's objective. I don't know if I made that clear or not.
Yeah, no, I think so.
But oh, sorry, let me
Yeah,
interrupt.
go ahead.
But yeah, the digital now, what's happened is photography has become now. George Eastman, who started Kodak, he put a brownie camera into everybody's home, and everybody became a photographer. Uh, but still, there was a process of finding what you wanted to photograph. You only had a roll with 10 negatives on it. You're very selective in what you shot, but almost everybody could afford a brownie camera, had the ability to communicate to the masses. Now it's 1,000 times fold of what you can do. Our phones have become the instruments of capturing imagery, cameras as well. Um, but now it's on a level it's gone from, when you use the brownie camera 100 and somewhat years ago, you were very selective in what you photograph. Now it doesn't matter. Now it's content. It's no longer it's no longer the message, it's the medium. And the medium is everybody can everybody has access to thousands and thousands of imageries, and it's become a narcissistic um, endeavor where very little is really usable as far as people out there photographing with their phones. Very little is usable. You still depend on the artist to use the phone, which is I do at this moment, or use the professional Hasselblad digital back camera. Uh, it's the person that knows how to see, how to capture a certain feeling or certain emotion that has those tools. Everybody else is just noise. It's basically just noise in the
Mhm.
background. When we turn to places that have your everyday photographer or everyday person that uses the phone or cameras to shoot, it's selfies. It's pictures of food. It's pictures of sunsets. It's still it's become mass communication, but the message is like 0.5%. There's very little message in whatever is online now as far as the masses using cameras.
Well, I think it's because also to some extent, one of the concepts I am discovering in my journey is that the media has become the market. So the media dictates right now how people should technically interact with technology, right? So we see this fast content production from fast fashion, fast food. We now have fast content, and it's, as you're saying, it's extracting the meaning. There's
Yeah.
no substance to it. But you actually touched upon my next question, and I was hoping we can kind of follow the journey of photography in terms of historical journey and the evolution of the medium and the evolution not only of the art, but I see it as a language. It's one of the first language systems we have that translated into digital, and it explored beyond what's painted or written. So
Yeah.
I like where you started with having the first camera into a household and being accessible to the general public into today. So can we follow, can you take us on the journey of photography from your standpoint, from your view of storytelling?
Well, my first image that I saw that fascinated me, and as a curiosity and as a as a point of interest, it was the image that I saw that fascinating was the very first photograph that was taken by Niepce, a French scientist. The first photograph he took was in 1826. It was from his room on the top floor in Paris, and he photographed the street scene in front of him. It was a there's discussion whether it was a 7 hour exposure or a 14-hour exposure, but so that image, the subtlety behind that image, it was very blurry. It was basically had no shadows because as a 14 or even a 7 hour exposure, the sun would sweep across the rooftops. So there was no shadows. And I thought, how fascinating that he captured a moment in time that will live. He didn't know it was going to live forever, but he managed to uh, steady the chemical process that I won't go into the technical parts of chemistry and photography, but he managed to capture the image and to pardon me, and to make it last a long time. Um, so that image sparked a curiosity in me, and I also at that time not only was it visually interesting, but was the chemical process of how um, we put film in front of a lens that captures an image as a latent image in film until it goes through a chemical process. I found that really kind of fascinating too. Um, so in 1826, that sort of started the process of photography um, by Niepce, and then there's a gentleman that came along, another Frenchman called Louis Daguerre, who turned photography into um, a more practical sense, which photographing on glass plates, which also captured the image. Interestingly enough, the first selfie was done in 1839. So at that time, there was already a narcissist tendency to photograph oneself um, for posterity. Um,
I'd like to call it self-expression because a lot of people are now they make their living with their brands and being online. So yes, there might be that narcissistic point of view, but as I said, I believe the market dictates a lot of us to expose and sell our um, sanctuary as a being. So a lot of people make a living from this type of photography. So maybe you disagree, but I believe it has a role in in the history of photography now, as you say, from 1830 something.
yeah. Well, photography didn't become an art. If I can build on what I think, didn't become an art um, until the 1900s. Alfred Stieglitz and Edward Steichen were the first photographers to turn photography as an art form. Here's an interesting little tidbit about photography, and this could be a footnote. Photography revolutionized painting. Before photography, painters like Jacques-Louis David, uh, Ingres, Vermeer, Gainsborough, their job was to capture life as precise as possible, as realistically as possible. So we had paintings of portraits of people. We had paintings of their homes. We had paintings of their table with food. We had paintings of street scenes, gardens. They tried to capture the most precise representation that they could. So what our eyes see. Along comes photography. Now, photography captures realism. In painting, like a Gainsborough, or even a Jacques Louis David, when he photographed the portrait, if somebody had a pimple, they just paint over it, like there's no pimple. Or if they had bags under their eyes, oh, just get rid of it. Or if their hair wasn't long enough, we just make the hair long. Photography, that couldn't happen. It was impossible to capture realism. What was the catalyst to that? Impressionist painting. We took, now photography captured realism. The artist painting what existed was irrelevant now because photography was capturing those moments in with realistic accuracy. The Impressionists came, and what they did was, we will paint the same, we will do this, capture the same imagery, but we'll add our own feelings to it. We'll add our own soul to it. We'll add our own text. So along comes Van Gogh, Toulouse-Lautrec, Monet, all these painters who captured the essence. And this goes back to what I was talking about before, the ways of seeing. They saw nature, people, society with their own vision, their own ways of seeing, and they put that on canvas. So what the Impressionists did, the Impressionists was a direct catalyst towards a reaction to photography. That's why we have the Impressionists.
Isn't it
Now,
interesting? McLuhan talks about that, how the new medium one eliminates properties of the previous one, but it also brings properties from an older medium.
yeah.
So that's
So
exactly what you're describing with
yeah,
this. Yeah, very interesting.
so photography became that. Now, what I wound up doing, and it goes back to what I was saying before, I've taken that same theory, and I'd hate to use my name with the masters because it's arrogant of me, but I've taken what I did with photography, which is realism, or well, I don't want to say advertising is real, but I took realism in capturing images to what I do now, which is conceptual photography, which is destroying the image and putting my own way of seeing that image onto a digital form or a paper. So, uh, yeah, so Alfred Stieglitz and Edward Steichen and all the other ones, Henri Cartier-Bresson, um, what was Georgia O'Keeffe, all these pioneers in the art of photography, because photography became a realistic way of capturing the world, they took photography and created the abstract with
Mhm.
photography.
And how
So
can we translate this to today, Carlos? I mean, we see there are a lot of very interesting photographers. I was just reading actually an article about an interview with one of them where his dream was to have documentary photography, and like his images are true stories, like each image is a story, so he's capturing beyond the seeing, as you were describing. How do you see the current, we're not talking about selfies and the social media, we're talking about contemporary photographers, and how do you see that art form?
um, well, I might not be the right person to comment on that because I'm not really up to what contemporary photographers are doing. And you mentioned documentary photography. That won't change. Document photography, um, a good documentary photographer uh, tells a clear story, um, has a message to provide the world, this audience, and also has an obligation of making those images visually, aesthetically interesting. That hasn't changed since photography started, since Matthew Brady photographed the Civil War in back in the 1665. I'm sorry, 1865. So this photographer, 100 somewhat years ago, would capture beautiful images of and tell the story of war. It still holds true today. Um,
Do you feel that the same accessibility, we have more photographers, they don't have to work for a publication, they could be self-made, where before that was usually supported by some type of
yeah,
institutional.
yes, they were working for a media a media company, whether it was a newspaper, well, mostly newspapers or magazines or periodicals. Uh, well, now it comes down to what information are we receiving online and whether that information is valid. Yeah, I could pick up my phone now and try to get a flight into Gaza and go photograph it. How valid is my my communication of that event? Um, uh, that brings to my question is that um, how do you separate uh, the the artist or the photographer that is coherent and is truthful in what they're capturing, and the other one that's just photographs because they think these images are going to be really cool to show at parties. Um, it's a lot like my son came to me the other day and said he's taking history at university. He said, "We get all this online. Uh, why should we have to go to university to get all this information?" And I said, "Well, that's the professor's job is to uh, filter out what's not necessary and what's fact and what's fiction. Same thing with photographers who go out and shoot. You said documentary. Who is editing these images? How can that be controlled? It can't. So it's up to the viewer to do a bit of research on who is this person, what are their motives, what are their intentions, what's their reputation, have they done this before? Um,
Yeah. Do you feel that there's a distortion of, because that's an interesting topic, because we know that nowadays with technology and digital manipulation, an image is no longer truth. Before, the image was the truth, right? Like, or the same way the spoken word that was the truth. Then it changed with radio and like mass media. Now we see the same with images.
yeah,
So what is your take on, we pretty much live in a world where authenticity and truth are scarce resources. It's hard for somebody to find the resource. How do you deal with that? Finding
uh,
truth.
at the lack of being philosophical, finding the truth.
Hmm.
Uh, you, well, let me just footnote that photography in news in communications has always been manipulated. ever since the beginning of photography in time. Margaret Hamilton put fairies in her backyard in photography. She superimposed uh, fairies, little girls dressed up as fairy godmother, over garden photography. She superimposed this in the darkroom. That was considered real, the fact that fairies existed for like 20 years or 30 years until somebody said, no, this is just a trick in the darkroom. We do no longer use darkrooms, but we use Adobe Photoshop. We can manipulate. You can. It's endless what we can do. So how do you discriminate between what's real and what's not? Uh, I don't have an answer for that. Um, I can tell when an image has been manipulated to a certain extent, but there are things out there that pop up on my screen that say, "Wow, this must be real because it doesn't look like it's been manipulated." I don't think you can tell. I don't think we're coming to a point where it's going to be hard to find what's true and what's not true. And we're at a point politically. When I mean politically, I mean social politically, that the, the lie becomes the truth.
Mhm.
So that's what we're in danger of. As long as we can determine that a photograph is real and it's giving me the image that I can relate to and I can believe, that's fine. But to the point that it starts to trick us, which it already does to a certain extent, then that becomes very, very dangerous. But we've created that already. Like I said, in our political, social political environment, the truth is alternative facts, if I can quote
Mhm.
uh,
Quite
media.
often even named as conspiracy, the truth itself, right? So it's
Yeah. So you can't tell. Like as a professional image maker and studying images, I can barely tell the difference.
Mhm.
Um, I have to use my common sense and say, wait a minute, that elephant does not really fly, does it? And hey, come over here. Do you think that elephant's really flying? Like you start to doubt yourself. So that's the power of image right now. Uh, so you have to be discerning. You have to be able to dissect the image and find out where is it coming from. What's the objective of that image? It,
Do you feel
it,
that perhaps we are still within a generation that had the privilege of having common sense from coming from an era where there's some truth within our lives? The next generations, do you feel that they will have that privilege of common sense?
um, well, whoever does get that common sense will have one up on everybody else.
Mm.
So at this moment, our formal educational system is very weak, and we don't put emphasis on dissecting what we see. We everything we take for face value now. Um, so um, yeah,
Anyway, those were not meant. I didn't expect you to have the the key
well, I don't have an answer
to
because
discourse.
we're moving so fast. It took us hundreds of years to harness the printed word. Hundreds of years. It's taken us about 100 years to master television or to control television. Technology is moving much faster than our physiology and our psychology can accompany it. Our technology is way ahead of what we can muster. We're still almost we our mindset is still in medieval times. We still have the same basic faults, right? All the faults that a human has. So how can a person or how can a human with frailties that we have that dates back hundreds of years, how can we accompany a technology that's so fast, to a certain extent, so pure? AI is going to be very pure. There's no emotion. It's strictly yes or no. So I don't see us in 100. Well, I won't be here by then, but will it take us 200 years to be able to harness technology to the point that our minds be at the same level? I don't know. At this moment, and this is my humble opinion, whatever it's worth, I don't think our minds are anywhere at the level that the technology is. We're still medieval people. You still
Oh,
have to base.
you're actually very generous because technically in my classes we know that we still operate from a lizard brain, that fight or flight. So I'm talking 500,000 years ago. You're very
Yeah.
generous with medieval times.
But yeah, in relation to what we see, yeah, because uh, and then this is when it becomes dangerous. If you're online with somebody on the other side, or something, or some intelligence identity on the other side, can bring a person to destroy themselves on the other side, that is extremely dangerous, and we have no way of harnessing that. No way. And imagery, photography is a part of that, because what affects mostly, I'm talking about, I guess, young teenagers, mostly young girls, they're always doing selfies of themselves, putting pictures of themselves online, and they're being critiqued in that. Oh, you're too fat, you're too skinny, you're to this. That is creating an incredible psychological impact on young people.
Yeah,
And
no,
that
I
has to do
agree
with
with you.
imagery. That has to do with photography, right? Because I have a niece who's 18. She passes the day taking pictures of herself and putting it out there. As we know, something that goes out online is there forever,
Yeah.
right?
But not
So,
only that, it's a harvesting of our, a lot of indigenous people and a lot of spiritual people don't they didn't want their photos taken because they believe a part of their soul is being captured.
yeah,
And that still holds true for a lot of people in those circles. And to some extent, seeing how much we are plugged into the technology, I have to say I relate to it. Because a part
yeah,
a part of you is always documented. A part of you will always be judged by some strangers and trolls and bots.
yeah, yeah,
I wanna, in the remaining time, if because you come from an advertising background, and I think it's increasingly difficult nowadays. As much as we see um, the decentralization of business, we also see those monopolies. There's a lot of small businesses right now that are trying to make a living, and they're relying on mass media and social media in particular to tell their story, to relate their brand to the wider audience. What advice would you give somebody that might be handling a personal brand or a small business of having more authentic photography, having a more artistic way of showing their brand and standing out?
yeah. Um, that that question is valid today as it was when photography was became huge in the 50s, the 1950s. That that still holds true. How do you separate the artist, the photographer, in this case the photographer? How do you separate the photographer from the mainstream? So competition is still drastic. It always has been, and it is now. The only difference is now we have more people that have access to photographic materials, photographic equipment. They have more access, and of course, uh, Photoshop, these post-production programs, can turn a mediocre image into a masterpiece. So a photographer now, not only does he or she have to control the equipment, but have to control software post-production. Now, how do they separate? How competitive is the market? The market is extremely competitive still as far as image making is concerned. Images are still what sell a product or a service. You can have in fact, yeah, I'll get back to that other point. So, what will separate the photographer, what it did in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and then the down point of when the late 90s when photography started to drop, what's still separate is how bring an individual look to your imagery, an individual style, something that nobody else is doing. That is what's going to separate you from the other photographers or the other image makers. I no longer call them photographers.
Yeah, because a lot of these small businesses, they're actually doing this themselves. They almost have
Yeah.
to step into multiple shoes, right? And wear many hats. And
The first time it hit me hard was, this was in Europe, and I had a client. It was J. Walter Thompson, fairly international ad agency, and I got contracted to shoot a stopwatch for an ad. And at the last minute, they said, "No, it's okay. We'll get the receptionist to do it." This was in the late 90s. We'll get the receptionist to do it and we'll put it into Photoshop. At that moment, I knew something is going to break big time. So yes, you can if you own a furniture shop and you want to photograph the desk for an ad, you can hire a photographer to do that. It's going to cost you not as much as it would 30 years ago, but it's still going to cost you some money. But if you can get a picture of it with your phone and give it to your nephew who's really good in Photoshop, your image is done and you just put an image maker out of work. So what's going to separate, and what I noticed this is in fashion photography at this moment, not so much advertising where you're shooting cars and blenders and TVs and whatever, but in the fashion world, you really notice this. The ones that make it are the ones that have an individual style. They're doing something with their imagery. They're doing something with the model. They're doing something with the locations that nobody else is doing. And also, they're adding post-production. So a photographer now, if he or she does not dominate post-production, Adobe systems or other systems, they're in trouble. They're in big trouble.
You feel
It's
that
mostly post-production.
going back to storytelling, because we know that just shooting a table or a chair alone is it's just you're reporting straightforward. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no meaning, there's no story. For all these small businesses out there, what is the key to storytelling in photography? And I know you were talking about the scene, but we're talking now where they have to produce almost brand new content daily, right? So that doesn't necessarily open a lot of space for art or for that conceptual thinking that you
Yeah.
you might have in mind. Is there a hijack? Is there like a a creative secret that perhaps people can employ daily?
For small clients,
For small businesses or small to medium sized businesses.
um, I don't, like I said, unless you bring in your own style, your own vision uh, to how to photograph, say, a car, uh, you got me. I really don't know. There's so many people with a lens in their pocket or around their neck. Um, I don't have an answer for that. I don't.
Mm.
I wish I did. Uh, but it, it, yeah, I don't. I
Okay.
don't.
That's all
It's the
right.
same as it was. It's the same as it was, 60 years ago, 70 years ago. It's whoever brings their own vision, something different from everybody else, that gets the client. Whether it's for a small agency or a large agency, they're bringing something new. They're bringing something different, and that's hard to do. Now it's really hard to do because there are a lot of young people out. Well, young doesn't matter if you're young or old. There are a lot of people out there just with their iPhones. They're producing incredibly beautiful imagery. Um, uh, so, in my opinion, right now, I have no my discipline. What I do now, I have no way to sell it, the brand. I have no way to do it. The only way to do it is to get somebody to represent you as an artist. As far as advertising or sort of marketing firms, it's just sending sending your site to them to maybe somebody will look at it. Uh, but
Mhm.
I have no answer for that. The market is
Okay.
so fast.
Carlos, how do you to kind of wrap it up, how do you draw creative energy? Where do you draw your creative energy from?
Um, oh, I could go cliche on you and say, oh, a beautiful piece of music or the sunset. But, no, I think I go to the absurd. I think that we as people uh, look at the conventional and we're very safe in what we look at and what we see and what we put up on our walls and what we read. Life is very safe. It's so complex, we have to be as safe as possible. So I find the absurd. Um, I had a show a couple of years ago called The Cosmos, which was what I thought. the cosmos looked like beyond Voyager 2, which was the farthest space equipment we sent out. And I wanted to photograph, I wanted, what does that look like before man gets to it? So I photographed what I thought was space, the cosmos outside Voyager 2, beyond Voyager 2. What it was just tabletops and concrete. I photographed pieces of sidewalk, tabletops, inside of vases, and I destroyed those images in Photoshop and created what looks like space or the cosmos with anomalies in the cosmos, with rogue stars. So I, I went as far abstract as possible.
Hmm.
I basically what it is Picasso. I hate using the word. I hate dropping names like this, but Picasso would reach inside you, down your throat, grab the insides, and bring it, bring it inside out, and that's how he saw the people, the essence of what it is. And he was an incredible technician. If you see his earlier work, he was an incredible technician, perfect realism. But he went to the absurd. And how crazy are we? What's our vision? And he was influenced, of course, by African art. And but that's the same thing that my approach is on a very modest, very insignificant scale, is take what seems like in this case was sidewalks and photographing the asphalt, the cobblestones, and blowing that up and turning it into something completely different. So it has to do with the absurd, has to do with the ridiculous, has to do with the impossible to a certain extent.
Hmm.
Um,
I like that. Thank you.
so that's if that's inspiring,
Well,
but
everybody's approach is it's a new perspective, which I think alone is a creative inspiration, right? So,
my inspiration is very banal. It's not philosophical at all. It is when you're young, when you're starting out, everything is pristine. But now it's very simple, very simple. Like I said, when we started, I used to photograph in studios with equipment and staff, and now I just my image maker's in my back pocket.
that
And
reminds me, I don't know why. I've read somewhere that Edgar Allan Poe said, "I apologize. I didn't have time to write you a short letter." So
well,
it takes time to come to simplicity. So
yeah.
that that is a skill on it. So thank you so
So,
much, Carlos. This was very it was interesting. It was very interesting
well,
and
thank you
nuance.
for inviting me. I'm not sure I'm in the intellectual level to be able to answer all those questions.
I don't think it's about the intellect. I think it's just about our human experience with mediums and the environment and just
Yeah.
our own personal human experience.
I wish I had the answer about the mass media now, what to do with imagery, but I don't have that. I don't have that answer, or even
I'm not
speculate
sure.
that.
I'm not sure anybody does. That's why I feel it's a personal approach. I like what you said. You have to find your own unique style because that's ultimately what differentiates us from each other and
Yeah,
also what connects us to each other.
yeah.
So,
So
yeah.
if
Thank
the
you so
artist,
much, Carlos.
you're very welcome, Mira.
Yeah. Have a good day.
You too. Bye bye.
Okay. Bye bye.